Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Bet Like No One's Watching podcast, a sports betting and fantasy sports lifestyle podcast. I'm your host, John Sullivan. You may know me from my Twitter page, Buffalo Hold'em, or other media appearances I've made. So it's the day after Labor Day. I couldn't find a good intro for this episode, so I decided to forego the production value and get right into it. It's episode 23, right before the start of NFL season. I hope everyone's enjoyed the summer. August wasn't very kind to me at all. Had a very poor month betting-wise. I went 3-9 in Aussie rules football, and that kind of more than wiped out all of my profit for the year. Basically went 1-5 over the last 2 weeks of the regular season. I made some judgment errors on teams that had locked in playoff spots. It seems like unless you're going for the premiership, the minor premiership, which is the regular season flag, and you're in the playoffs, they don't really fight for playoff position in this league. They sure didn't in the last couple of weeks. Definitely a lesson learned for next season, but this week we've got the quarterfinals going there. And see how I do going up to the grand final, which is the 23rd of September, I think, somewhere around there. CFL, I had a horrible start to the month. I went like 1-5 or 0-5 to start the month in CFL. Excuse me, and then ended up going 5-8 for the month of August. I still up multiple units on the year. It's a 6-month season. Not unusual to have one or two losing months. That was my first losing month of the year in CFL. It's been a super strange year parity-wise. The West teams are all equal, but all of the West teams are far superior to the East teams, which seem to be equally crappy together. So the 5 best teams in the league are all in the same division, which is, it's tough for their current playoff format because it's likely that an Eastern Conference team is going to play for the Grey Cup. And so you can be shitty all year as long as you have one good game when it really matters. Now, one of those Western Conference teams will probably cross over to the Eastern playoffs, but they'll have to win 2 straight road games to get to the Grey Cup final, and that's not going to be easy at all. So looking forward to things getting interesting in the CFL, but I'm here to start talking about the NFL season, which starts on Thursday in just a couple of days. And NFL has the largest limits at the sports book and also provides the luxury of posting lines early and giving us basically the whole week to look for the best numbers to make a desired wager. So, all the games get over Sunday night, even though there's still a Monday night game usually. And NFL games for the next week are already online. They're already in the Vegas books, and that gives you a few days to chew on the numbers and think about which games look the most attractive to you. I find my experience has been the last 2 years that Friday morning, the injury reports come out Thursday night. Friday morning and Saturday morning is when I usually fire the bets I want to make, and then Sundays bets, a lot of late money comes in, and the lines go pretty haywire for a couple hours on Sunday mornings. Sometimes they'll go way in your favor or way against your favor, so I might drop an extra unit on a Sunday morning if the lines move. There's got to be some significant concrete evidence not to drop an extra unit if you really believe in your wager and you've studied it. There could be personnel changes, weather conditions, coaching changes, the like. But I feel pretty confident to, I have a really hard time dropping a third unit on a game. That's happened to me a couple times this year in Aussie rules in CFL, where I've bet a game, the line's moved in my favor, and I bet it a second time, and it's moved in my favor again. And I just have reservations about dropping that large percentage of my bankroll. That's about, if I drop the third unit, that would be about 10% of my bankroll on one outcome, and it's just too much of a risk for me. And some of those have come in more often than not. Those multi-unit plays have come in. So it's being, mitigating your risk. I'm just not comfortable doing it. Other people are. So to each their own there. So going forward into the NFL season, I'm ready to place my wagers, but I'm not sure how much fantasy I'm going to play or if I'm going to join any survivor pools or pick'em pools. I do want to mention in this podcast, I'm not paid to mention this, but I think these are good deals if you like to play fantasy. There's 2 great DFS promos this season, and none of them involve $1 billion. The DraftKings promo is so stupid. I would never. The chances of winning $1 billion, you have a much better chance of winning the Powerball than the $1 billion at DraftKings. So anyway, the 2 promos I really do like that I think you should consider playing this year. The first one is called the Golden 5, and that's on FanDuel. And it's a very simple game to play. You pick 1 quarterback, 2 wide receivers, 2 running backs, and that's your 5 players on your team. There's no salary cap. And it's a free roll. You enter every week, and if you happen to pick the highest scoring possible lineup out of those 5 spots, you pick the best scoring quarterback, the 2 best scoring receivers, the 2 best scoring running backs, you'll win the $20,000 prize that week. But the cool thing is, if nobody picks the top 5, it rolls over to the next week. So the next week it's a $40,000 free roll, then a $60,000 free roll. So it goes all the way through week 17, and if for some reason nobody wins this contest in any of the first 16 weeks, then in week 17 they're going to give that total pool of $340,000 away to the highest scoring team on week 17, which is, it's a big fat amount of money. It only take a few minutes of your time, and it doesn't cost a dime. I think it's worth spending 2 or 3 minutes of your time putting together a 5-man roster to have a shot at $20,000. So I would say give that a shot. Definitely won't cost you anything. Now, one place that I've been very interested in lately that I haven't ever given a try before, but I'm thinking about it this year, is Yahoo Daily Fantasy Sports. And they're offering a very interesting promo this year that is kind of a hybrid between daily fantasy and regular season. It's called their NFL DFS Cup, and it's a 16-week free roll, and the best score over the 16 weeks wins $50,000. But if you're in the top 10,000 finishers, you're going to cash and win some money. I want to say there's $100,000 in total prizes. I'm not sure. I can't remember off the top of my head. But the way this works is you draft a salary cap team, like a full salary cap roster for each week. Doesn't cost you anything to enter. And you can pick whomever you want as long as you can fit them in the cap. And then the next week you pick another team. And the next week you pick another team. So 1 bad week probably won't kill you. 2 bad weeks will probably put you pretty far behind the 8 ball. But this way you can show that if you're a consistently good fantasy player and can put up decent scores over the whole 16 weeks, you can win yourself some cash. Again, doesn't cost anything. I know that Yahoo has a very similar setup to FanDuel, but you might want to mess around with it for free, and if you really like your team, maybe drop a couple of entries on Yahoo, or copy it. If the price points are similar, copy it over to FanDuel and play a FanDuel game. As far as me playing fantasy, I've been thinking about giving Yahoo DFS a try because a couple of reasons. Their prize pools are not huge, which is not that big of a deal for me, but not a deal breaker for me. But they limit their multi-entries to 10 per player, and there's no scripting. So you can put 10 lineups together if you want to play a multi-entry, and they have a bunch of single-entry tournaments if you like the single entry. They're guaranteed to run, so might be worth a shot. I haven't really looked at all their fine print and their cash out rules and everything, so I'm not sure if I'm going to dip into that. But I kind of, believe it or not, I kind of think that Yahoo's in a great position, especially if these two big players, FanDuel and DraftKings, start having financial problems. I mean, they didn't blow their load on their fantasy product, and they're in a great position to, take over down the road. So, anyway, I may give that a shot. We'll see what happens. So today's episode, I'm done talking about fantasy sports. I want to spend the rest of this episode talking about something that I think is a huge tool to sports bettors, to degenerates everywhere, and that is Bitcoin, or more specifically, cryptocurrencies in general. So I'm going to spend the rest of the time here just talking about a little bit about what Bitcoin is and why I think that it can be useful to you. If you're listening to this podcast, you're obviously either interested in fantasy sports or betting on sports, and you're going to need to use what Bitcoin offers you in many different ways. So let's start by talking about what Bitcoin is. If you've never heard of Bitcoin, you are probably living under a rock. So here's my definition of Bitcoin. Bitcoin is an open source digital asset / currency with a public ledger called blockchain that uses cryptography to confirm transactions between parties. Now, I know you're probably saying, what? So let me break that down step by step. Bitcoin is an open source digital asset. Open source, which means it's a public, freely distributed software. It's a digital asset. It's something, it's a design to hold and transfer value through through electronic means, with a public ledger called blockchain. People talk about blockchain technology. The blockchain is basically a ledger book that records every transaction, and anybody that downloads the Bitcoin software can download the blockchain, and then therefore they have a copy of the public ledger. So since everybody that has the Bitcoin software has the same ledger, all the transactions can be verified on the blockchain. And this blockchain uses cryptography to confirm transactions between parties. What that means is they use mathematical equations to verify that the transactions have taken place. And when the transactions are confirmed by enough copies, enough people on the network, the Bitcoin software is downloaded all over and they're connected by the internet. So when enough people have verified the transaction, it gets added to the blockchain. So I've already confused you probably, but that in 1 minute or less is the definition of Bitcoin. And I'm going to tell you, I'm going to be brutally honest and say I got into Bitcoin in 2011. This is a humble brag, I guess, but the reason why I got into Bitcoin is because I wanted to find a way to wager on sports from my home in the East Coast, where wagering is very difficult. And I got into Bitcoin at $13.50, humble brag, and never looked back. I know that people like to say, "Oh, I made so much money on it." I've had to spend my Bitcoin. I've had to use it to, for other things from time to time. But I will admit that the insane rise in Bitcoin price did help increase my bankroll. I was able to make wagers bigger and faster because, Bitcoin went from 13 to 100, then it went from 100 to 1,000. Stayed at, it went back down to 300 and then slowly worked its way back up to 1,000, and here we are today at 4,000. So, it's funny because the books would usually take, they would say max wager 12 Bitcoin, and now it's max wager, 1 Bitcoin, if that. On my smaller sports like CFL and Aussie, it's much less than that. But I'm not a baller. I'm just your average guy that will occasionally get a nickel or a dime on a game. So, I'm still small potatoes. Anyway, if you measure your bankroll in Bitcoin, and not U.S. dollars, it's still bigger year over year since 2013. What that meant, I'm sorry, that came out wrong. If you measure my bankroll in Bitcoin and not U.S. dollars year over year since 2013, it's bigger every year, which means my betting strategies, my methodologies have worked even without the Bitcoin rise in price. So, I'm a firm believer. If I was able to wager in U.S. dollars, I certainly would. If I was able to wager in Canadian dollars, I certainly would. But it's easier to wager in cryptocurrency for me because of where I live than, it's cheaper than flying to Vegas. So am I here telling you to invest in Bitcoin? Absolutely not. I do think it's a good investment, not investment advice, but I don't want you to invest in good Bitcoin. But why do I bring it up then? Because Bitcoin and altcoins, which are other cryptocurrencies besides Bitcoin, are a way you can build your bankroll. This is something that anyone can do as long as you have a computer and an internet connection. So basically what I'm telling you is you can create your own bankroll through mining coins. And most cryptocurrencies are distributed through something called mining, which is generating new coins on each new blockchain. So anyone who's connected to the internet can get involved in this process. Now, I'm not going to get into a tutorial on how to mine, but in the last year, 18 months, mining has become simple enough so that anyone can do it. Two popular examples of this are MinerGate and NiceHash, which allow you to sell your computing power in exchange for Bitcoin or other coins. You don't need to be a computer expert to run these programs. You just need to install them and choose what you want to mine and let it run and get paid for it. So if you have a decent gaming PC, you could easily, probably, in my opinion, raise enough during the off months to bankroll your NFL betting or your NFL DFS season. It doesn't require a second job. Doesn't even require much time on your part. Many of these coins have limited production runs. They have production ceilings. For example, Bitcoin, there's only going to be 21 Bitcoin ever mined, and once they're mined, that's it. So the more Bitcoin is adopted, the more people get into it, the more people find out about it, the more people use it, the more demand there's going to be. And that's going to raise the price of Bitcoin. And that's one of the reasons you see these crazy prices we have now, because in my opinion, there's institutional money coming into Bitcoin. It was just, the mom and pop people before that. So every time the price dips, there's buyers ready to step in. And there's another factor involved, and that's the miners. The mining gets more difficult over time as the price goes up, and the amount of computing power and energy needed to sustain the network is always increasing over time, and that will create a higher price structure as well, or can help contribute to the higher price structure. So I know a lot of people might be saying, well, Bitcoin is frickin' $4,000. How much Bitcoin can I earn on my little dinky PC? So you would be surprised, depending on what you have and what you can do, a small amount of money you can spend to jazz up your computer. And I'm not going to get into the technical details, but I will be willing to do, an intro to mining or an intro to earning Bitcoin podcast. If people are interested, you have to let me know. But if you think you missed the boat on Bitcoin, you haven't. If you don't believe me, just ask your family members and their friends. Hey, do you know what Bitcoin is? See how many of them have even heard of it. And some may have heard of it, but if they have, ask them, can you tell me what it is? Or ask them, how much do you own? And almost nobody has it. So a mass adoption hasn't even happened yet. So the real price jump hasn't happened yet. And there's going to be big dips and, valleys and peaks, and it's a roller coaster ride. But if you can get into this without doling out any of your own cash, why wouldn't you hop on that train? Why wouldn't you at least give it a try? Also, there are currently about 850 different coins available. Some of those projects are abandoned and are dead. Some of them are sleeping giants. I believe there's several coins that priced under $1 right now that will jump, like Bitcoin, maybe not to 5K, but substantial increases. If you get a coin, that's going for $1 right now, something like Digibyte or Vertcoin or something like that, ends up going to 50. Well, what is that? What kind of what's that? A 5,000% ROI? There's a lot of opportunity in here, and the chances of them going to a ceiling like that are much greater than them going to zero. If you buy a coin for $1 and it goes to 10 or it goes to $5, that's okay. I mean, that's really good returns for a traditional investment. So, but the odds are that one of these coins is going to break out. So if you can find an altcoin that's easy to mine, and at the end of the day, you can exchange it for Bitcoin, that's just as good as mining Bitcoin itself. So if you get your miner up and running, and you mine Monero, or you mine Litecoin, or you mine some other coin besides Bitcoin, and at the end of the day, you take all the coins you've mined and exchange it for Bitcoin, well, that's just as good as if you spent the whole day mining Bitcoin, and you may find out that will actually earn you more money at the end of the day. So another thing to consider. So the reason I bring all this up is because mining is going to go mainstream in the next few years. This is, I've been pretty good at spotting trends over the last decade, and the easier this becomes for everybody, in 5 years, everybody will be doing this. They'll be doing it on their phones. The people will be talking about it. Social media is already, talks a lot about mining and trading of different cryptocurrencies, but this is going to go from the nerds, just like fantasy sports. In the beginning, it was just the fantasy sports nerds like myself, and then it went mainstream, and then you had, dude bros who thought they were geniuses all playing fantasy, and the Bradley C's came in. The same thing's going to happen with cryptocurrency mining. It started with just nerds, and now everybody will be doing it soon. So the sooner you can learn about it, the sooner you give it a try, the better you're going to understand new opportunities in this area when they arise. But to tie it all together, learn how to mine, use user-friendly mining software, learn about your computer hardware, and make some extra money on the side, and use that money to place your wagers, or it's a lot less stressful on your sweat when the money that you have on the line can be re-upped through another round of mining or whatever. So there's always a way to boost your bankroll. Take advantage of it, because I know I will. So if you want me to do more episodes on cryptocurrency, or tutorial episodes, how to buy, how to sell, how to mine, how to wager, please leave me a comment, send me a tweet. I always appreciate the feedback. I know people don't like everything I do, but I'm always glad to hear from you, and I really thank you for taking the time to listen to me when I do have time to record podcasts. So that's it for the summer, and that's it for episode 23. Enjoy Rogers' nice league, and hopefully we'll get all the games in with this bad weather coming. And until next time, bet like no one's watching. Take care. Goodbye.